Okay, thank you, Jess and Mackenzie, and welcome everybody to our Tech and Learning webinar today. We're going to be covering part one of our two-part series on recruiting and onboarding and retaining talented, passionate educators. Special thanks to our sponsors at PowerSchool for making this time possible together for us today. Today, we're going to be digging in on the recruiting and onboarding process. And we've got a terrific panel of experts to discuss this important topic. We know that recruiting and retaining teachers and staff has been a continued challenge for school districts. So we're going to dig into some of those strategies on the recruitment piece and the development, and then the ongoing process as well. So before I introduce our panelists, let's meet one another. So if you could put your name into chat, tell us where you're coming from, your school district, and we are thrilled to have you here with us today. So without further ado, let me introduce our panel. We have Dan Ryder, who's the Director of Design and Innovation at CRCS Overman in Maine, and also a winner of our Tech and Learning Innovative Leader Award. We have Greg Bagby, who is the coordinator of instructional technology at Hamilton County Schools and also a winner of the Tech and Learning Innovative Leader Award. And we have Fred Scott, who is a 34-year K-12 Virginia education veteran who now works as a solutions engineer at PowerSchool. And one of my favorite facts about Fred is that his former school district gave him the nickname Talent Fred, which I love, and due to his outstanding work in the district. So I was saying on our rehearsal here that he's inspired us all at Tech and Learning to come up with nicknames for ourselves. So still working on that. Before we get started, let me remind you, we love interaction during our webinars. So as Justin McKenzie said, use that Q&A to add your questions, and they're going to go into the queue for the speakers, and we will try and get to as many of them as we can after the conversation. So let us get started. So for each of our panelists, I'd like to, if you could tell us a little bit more about yourself and your district, and then share maybe any particular recruitment challenges, as well as some strategies that you found to be successful when you're recruiting educators, teachers, and staff. And let's start with my friend, Greg.
Well, thank you very much for the welcome, and thank you for being here, all of you that are here. Greg Bagby, Coordinator of Instructional Technology, Hamilton County Schools. I was in the classroom for 13, 14 years, and then I moved to the dark side of being a principal for the next 13 years, and then I moved to an even darker side when I moved to the district office. But sorry about that. But now I'm working in the district office, and I get to help principals with just this thing with recruiting and onboarding, and it's great. In my district, we have a little bit of a challenge. Well, actually, we have lots of challenges. We have about 44,000 students, and of those students, we can give demographics about them. Yes, we have some Black kids, some white kids, some Asia Pacific Islanders, some Hispanic kids. We have all of them. But where Chattanooga is, we sit on the Tennessee-Georgia border. And only until recently, like this year, the pay in my district was a little bit less, actually a lot less than the surrounding districts or just across the state line. So it was a real challenge for us to just being able to recruit teachers to come to the district initially. And then from there, keeping the teachers. And another issue that Chattanooga, Hamilton County has had. Historically, we've had a lot of private schools. And when I say a lot of private schools, I mean a lot. When I first started in my role here in the district, there were 36% of school-age children were in private schools. And that was very, very high. We've done a lot in the public school system to get the kids to come back to the district, or to get the parents to be willing to put the kids back in the district. I think we're around 10% now, which is almost close to national average. So we're happy about that. But we still have the private schools where, I don't know, some guy named Ted Turner will come up and drop $1 million in his private school that he went to just because it's there. And when teachers see that, they're like, oh, wait, they have money and they have funding with people that own the Braves. So they know that, I guess, their job will be a little bit secure there. But in my district, because we've had those private school issues and the Georgia Line issues, we've we've had to do a couple of different things to make sure that we're recruiting the best that we can. Some of the things that we do, of course, we do the usual suspects as LinkedIn or the Glassdoor, if you want to look about them and look at the things, and then we have recruiting fairs. I believe most folks do that, but we are blessed to have a couple of universities in our area, and we have schools, education schools here in town at the universities. But one of the things that I love doing is going to the college days or the college career days when they have them at college campuses. And I like to insert myself in the classes of the education courses. For example, I'm a speaker, a regular speaker at one of the universities on technology and education. And I've been doing that since, I don't know, like 10 years before I even had this job. And I also go to another class where I'm one of the principals that talks about what we want out of our teachers. And I think that's a way that I fold in my personal recruiting to get kids or teachers to think about, oh, maybe I can go to this guy's school. I've met him. Maybe it's another way that I can do it. And I think it helps because oftentimes there's teachers or pre-service teachers that come to me and say, "Hey, I saw you here, I saw you there, and I'm really interested in knowing what you're going to do and how you're going to do it." And I try to do this because one of the main things that I like to say, I would tell my teachers this all the time, is the whole idea of RPM equals academic success, the relationships, the passions of the students and motivations. If you figure out what those things are, you can have academic success. Well, I try to build relationships with these folks, these pre-service teachers, and I try to figure out their motivations before they even apply for jobs and even their passions, so I can speak into their passions when I'm recruiting or when I'm talking about things inside of their classrooms, just because I want to give myself a little bit of an edge over all the other principals. We have 80 schools in my district, but like I said, we're on the Tennessee-Georgia border, and there are like 3 districts right across the Georgia line. And then we have, of course, districts that are surrounding my county. So I always want to give myself a little edge. And I would start with making sure that I'm building relationships with these folks that may or may not ever apply for my district. But I think the relationship is the starting point. And that's how I start my recruiting.
I love it. And I'm glad you talked about building those relationships because that's really, and it kind of ties into this introducing the school culture and why it's a great place to work. So thank you for that. So next up, Dan, let's hear from you. Again, tell us a little bit about yourself, the district, and then some of the challenges and strategies you've used for recruiting.
Absolutely. This is going to be a nice transition, I think. What Greg was saying, I think is going to segue nicely into the points I'd like to make about what we do at Community Regional Charter School. So yeah, my name's Dan Ryder. I'm a 20-some-odd year veteran educator who spent the first solid 15 years of his career as an English teacher in a rural Maine high school. And over the last few years, I've gotten really into running spaces that are around problem solving and making life better for humans. And I ended up here at Community Regional Charter School, which is a free public charter school here in rural central Maine. We have 400 total learners across our district. So just a little smaller than Greg's, just a shade. 3 campuses. Our learners come from all walks of life. We have kids who come from thriving homes and thriving communities. We have kids coming from struggling homes and struggling communities. We have about 30% of our learners receive special services of some sort. 50% or more. I think we're actually up to 75% receive free or reduced hot lunch. So we provide free hot lunch for all in our district. And where we are located in Maine is it's been through a constant economic struggle since about 1989. And it's a town that was a thriving mill town and manufacturing town, and it's constantly searching to reinvent itself, and is and we serve 16 different towns from the surrounding area. So we have a lot of demographic challenges in that way here at CRCS, and we also it sometimes it's challenging to talk about, but we have a very purple political climate here, and that can it's been especially evident in the past 6 to 8 years. And I've only been with the district for 5, but it's very evident that has an impact on our hiring, on our learners, on our climate, our culture. And so one of the ways, the biggest way that we address it, and what's really worked for us is we have a very distinctive vision and mission in our school. We are learner customized, project-based, proficiency-based education that works to raise community problem solvers, both that are going to work to make where they live better and also make themselves better and give them the opportunities that they want. By constantly focusing on that mission and vision and having one that's real, right? We've all been in the experience of being in districts or in schools where true life experience. I was once in a committee meeting, like a staff meeting, and on the agenda was create the mission and vision. We were the English department, and we were asked to do the one for the school in 20 minutes. And so we wrote a thing, and people went, "That sounds good." And it became the official mission and vision. Like, that's not what we do at CRCS. We actually live and breathe it. We work a lot on aligning. And what that does is when we talk to recruits and we talk about potential hires, 1, we're able to vet, so that helps. But 2, we can share with them exactly who we are and what we're about. And everything that we share about us lines up to that. And so when they look things up about, well, what is your school like? And they may see some of the warts and things, but they're also going to see that those are in the service of what we're really trying to do with customized learning, which is hard and challenging, right? That's one that alone, if there's a takeaway from me that you're going to hear me kind of pinpoint again and again, the importance of having that as an organization cannot be overstated. And it doesn't hurt that we are small and nimble. And when we want to make decisions, it takes maybe 12 hours to take an action on something versus, a committee assignment, and a few weeks down the road, we make decisions. So things that larger organizations can do to streamline their systems and their processes, that's something that we have really done an outstanding job on, and that has allowed us to hire people who have emerged within, sometimes literally within 2 or 3 days of them applying. We have them interviewing, we have them in the pipeline for their final interview, and we know whether or not they're going to be a good fit. And that makes a huge, huge difference to do that, all that work leading up to it, and work that you actually believe in.
Yeah, absolutely. And a couple of things. It reminds you a little bit of Science Leadership Academy here in Philly, which is a magnet school. And when you talk about that vision, I've known Chris Lehman for many years. Every student, every teacher, every staff member knows what that vision is, can communicate that vision, and they've also done really well. And I also like that the faster decision process that might be appealing, that teachers have a voice there. So I think that's something that's interesting. And I think that could be scaled too, but I know that bigger districts it's a little trickier to be nimble and be quick about it. But
I just think it's interesting you brought up SLA, because Chris Lehman is a good friend of mine as well. And a lot of the work that I've been doing for the last 10 years or so has been really informed by what he does. And we just were able to go down, 3 of us from CRCS were able to go to EduCon in January actually spend time learning from those learners and learning from Chris and his team there. And it was really great to bring people from here who go, oh, this is what we want to do.
Yeah.
So it just makes
Love it.
it feel possible, right?
Yeah, I love it. That's great. And then Fred, love to get your, again, tell us a little bit more about yourself. Quickly, because I know you've had so many things, but you also have worked with a variety of school districts and probably a variety of cultures and that sort of thing. So can you share a little bit about what you've seen in your experience?
Sure. First of all, I am very fortunate that in my life that I've had the opportunity to work in education. That was my love. And I've worked in the urban and suburban school districts in Virginia and where I live. But I want to share this with you about me. I've worked in multiple capacities, and those capacities also built my own journey. And that journey would be, I was a teacher, curriculum specialist, in charge of instructional technology, principal, and I can keep going on. But the main focus was helping children to grow and helping teachers to teach, whether in any capacity that I've been in. But I want to talk about the past, now the present, and the future. The past, school districts used to deal with the traditional ways is they go out, they recruit, people come in, they didn't have the challenges as much, but they could pick and choose, but they still wanted to provide the best possible person in the classrooms. That was the core, and that's still the core. And the present is still saying that. You heard my two colleagues, Greg and Dan, talk about they're still putting the right person in that seat to be in front of the kids. Now, in the future, I wanted to say this in moving forward and talk about what PowerSchool is doing and what we're doing in assisting school districts. In the present now, all teachers from the past, present, and the future, you know what? They want to teach kids. That's the bottom line. They want to teach children, but they have three things that I have experienced in hiring large numbers of people and working with people who are doing that on this side of the house, is they want to be respected, they want their work to be inspected, and they also want to have solid expectations of what their job is. Those are the three things. So remember, respect, inspect, respect. The other piece is that we've discussed, they want their journey as a teacher or as an employer, as an educator in that school district to be personalized. And that personalization is they want to connect to the culture and the climate of that district. The culture, meaning, and you heard my two colleagues mention, the mission, the vision, what does that look like? And also the nomenclature of that district, because they want to see themselves right in that. The other piece they want to do is to really understand benefits, not just HR benefits, but the benefit of being an employee in that school district. So recruitment efforts have been very important there. So I want to end this section for me in saying PowerSchool, we released a 2024 Ed Focus report, and 45% of the district leaders stated that staffing was the number one priority. And it was the top three strategies that school districts across the country, we did many school districts in this particular study, said recruitment strategies to fill key positions is one of their top things. So we want to help school districts to support those strategies by giving them the tools in order to do so. So we're working with many districts across the country nationwide to help them use the many tools that they have, tools that we have, connecting that. But most of all, I could talk about the hardware and software, but the biggest thing is we want to connect the humanware, which is the people.
I love that. So I love that personalized, again, I'm hearing, basically honoring the teacher voice, but you also mentioned something about defining, kind of personalizing their career journey. So maybe kind of like the folks on the call here, maybe you want to start your journey in the classroom, but I think districts who have helped to support, here is the journey, here is how I can support you and personalize that for you. I think that's fantastic. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
And then next question, I just wondered if you can each talk a little bit about casting a wide net. So it sounds like there are always challenges. Other districts are offering more money. Other districts might be less rural, that sort of thing. So maybe let's start with Dan. You can talk a little bit about the actual recruitment process, maybe some more tactical stuff, and then how you're casting a wide net.
Absolutely. So we started, again, our school has only existed for a few years. Our whole district has existed for about 12. The building that I tend to spend most of my time in, only for 5. So we've only been a pre-K through 12 district for about 5 years. And so we don't have a whole lot of institutional knowledge of what works and doesn't work. So we started doing what most people do, which is the traditional put it out on your job posting sites. There's one in New England called Serving Schools, and that's been our primary driver for years. And then it was also the going to your college fairs and visiting the teacher prep programs in our region, and those have all been fine. But what's really been helpful for us to get the word out is using social media to constantly be talking about what we're doing and that we're always looking for people. And even if we don't have a job posting, we kind of make it clear that we are always in conversation with people who might be a good fit. And I don't know that all schools realize the impact that constantly sharing what they do doesn't just build relationships with the families. It doesn't just build relationships with potential funding sources and such, right? It builds relationships with potential hires, potential staff, potential humans that share your love and your passion, your interest, your mission and vision. And that has been monumental for us. I mean, Instagram alone has generated more do you have any positions, available? Do you have any, right? Because our communities and where we are, Maine, yes, there are people on LinkedIn in Maine, but LinkedIn jobs, LinkedIn education is not where most of our hiring is going to come from, right? Putting it onto Indeed, fine. But again, it's not really going to be where we're going to find most of our recruits. We have had so much more success by kind of being where everyone is instead of where the hiring happens. And that has led to great conversations, great outreach. And we just came off of our best kind of hiring season ever. And even though we were really late to picking up the last couple of people we needed for this school year that starts on Monday, we ended up with one of the best classes of educators that we've ever had. And I really think that that's because we're focusing on being our authentic selves, sticking with that mission and vision, and really living and breathing it, and allowing us to remain open to whomever might come out of the woodwork that says, hey, I'm really interested in teaching. Cool. Let's figure out how to help you get to the place where you can be part of our community, and make sure that you've got the training that you need and the certifications and all. Some of those things can become immediate barriers for a lot of districts. And for us, it's a barrier at the moment, but let's figure out if there's a way for us to get over it, rather than, we're just going to slide that automatically because our AI informed tool says so. We just can't afford to do that, right? Because the number of people that we have applying makes it so that if we used any sort of filter like that for us, we'd miss out on candidates. So that's kind of what our net is like.
Yeah, no, 2 things. One is I love that you are willing to support someone who wants to be a teacher, because if we're all, we need to build this pipeline, and, we need some good PR out there that teaching is a really rewarding profession. And so folks who may not have thought about that as a career, it's really interesting to say, hey, if you're interested, we're here to help you. And I also found it interesting that you use social media. So you mentioned Instagram. Are you kind of posting stories about what kids are doing in the school, or what it's just basically getting the word out about what you're doing there?
Yeah, most of it, I should say it's also Facebook, because that's the other place. Like me, I love it here. I've grown up here. I'm a 40-year-old Mainer, and I love it. But we're also like, we like to catch up. 5 years behind is kind of our way. So Facebook is still like a thing that people really like to use. But it is sharing stories. One of our building principals just got into making reels, and she's all sorts of excited about it. And it's great because there's enthusiasm around it. But yeah, it's telling the stories of what we do, why we do it. Every now and again, there's a post saying, hey, we're hiring, or hey, if you're interested in a job. But we find that sharing the stories of learners, sharing images of what's happening. And yeah, we like get on the Canva and make them look cool, or Adobe Express, make them look sweet. And we don't want stuff to like I made it like on MS Print, and
No.
I'm an Apple IIgs print shop banner saying we're hiring. That hasn't got. Although now that I don't know, might be retro cool.
I love it.
You never know. But awesome. The last thing, and I just want to make sure I point out, because I said something that was a little bit disparaging for recruiting practices, and I don't mean to put it that way, but I talk about the filters that districts have to use. There are districts that are so large, they get so many that their HR folks couldn't possibly manage if there wasn't some automatic filtering. And there weren't tools that are available to do that. And so I don't mean to say that those are bad by any stretch. They're not a good fit for us because we really have to make sure that we have human eyes on every inquiry, because we never know where it's going to come from. And we want to make sure that we don't turn potential away just because we had the wrong button click, right?
Yeah.
Like that's for us is a big concern. So anyway, I just didn't want to.
Thank you.
And I love so much of what it offers. So.
Yeah, well, I think maybe let's turn to Fred, because you have worked with so many districts, and again, having to deal with that scale of the recruitment process. So maybe you could share a little bit with us about some ways you have cast a wide net at scale.
Love what Dan was saying. Love what you were saying about the social media, because that was going to be one of my points. As the job market is becoming increasingly digital and competitive, non-traditional recruitment ways and sources are prominent. And you heard Dan mention a couple of things that he was doing that is meeting the need at his district. And every district is going to have different needs. But social media, if your district is not considering it, it's time to consider it, because it is a non-traditional source of recruitment. And many of the districts I have worked with as a consultant, and even seeing it from a solution engineer, where people who are looking at our solutions, the number one thing they do talk about is how can you connect to the different platforms. They will mention LinkedIn, they will mention Indeed, they will mention the same traditional ones. But I like the fact that Dan said Instagram, which is now moved to number one on the social media platform. But I think all the districts should look at all the tools and see what works for them, where their candidates are, and find the data that says when they were coming in, which tool did you use to find out about our information? And if you're going to use the tools, add some multimedia to it. That's very important. But using that to attract the candidates is a good means of recruitment and bringing it in. And we're hearing from many districts, small, big, large, are trying to use social media to project their culture and climate that I mentioned earlier, and what did they do, and here's why you should come here. Another piece that we promote, and I have seen in the promoting, is how to use job boards. because many of the pre-service programs do promote job boards, and we do have one, which is the largest one in the country, called School Spring Job Boards. But using those job boards to interact with those candidates so they can see where the jobs are, whether they want to go from one place to the next. And one of the things we have tried to do, that we heard from our in our research, that candidates said, where are these jobs? Where are they located? If I were to go to Indiana, if I were to go to Pennsylvania, if I were to go to Virginia or North Carolina, and I zone in on Charlotte, I zone in on Richmond, Virginia, I zone in on Atlanta, Georgia, where are those jobs located? And if I were to choose a location, where is it? And so that's one of the things we try to, not try, but we have incorporated into our platform, and districts are using that to push and push it out there, let them know what it is. And once they pull them in, these are our platforms that we're using. This is our culture that we were trying to do. A third way that I would suggest to school districts is using non-traditional sources. I'll never forget when I was in a position like Greg is in, that I was recruiting for an entire team. I wanted a diverse team of skill and talent. And that diversity was going to come in by recruiting from across the country. Now, this was happening a few years ago, and the HR department said, why is Fred trying to do things outside of the scope of what our traditional methods are, such as, and it was like social media, I want to use those tools because that's going to be the way of the future. So having virtual events, the face-to-face is always great, but now you may have a candidate in Utah or California who wants to come to Maryland or Virginia or South Carolina, and they may not be able to get there, but using virtual tools inside of that would help them to facilitate faster. I never forget, and this is a story I have, I was doing a workshop with a group in Utah, and the lady said, I had to do, we wanted to do some different non-traditional recruitment sources. So the strategies were, we used the social media to present our platform, who we are, what we're doing. That was going to be constant. And then when we're attracting those, who and seeing who those people are, they wanted to use our job board to say, hey, let's recruit outside of this state to see if we can get some high quality candidates coming in and integrate some virtual opportunities. They said by using those three non-traditional sources, they have attracted some wonderful candidates to come to their district. So it's a matter of pulling them all in. And as a team, everybody has to think, what can we do better? What can we do to use these non-traditional sources to recruit, to get the best folks to be in that classroom with the kids?
I love it. I love it. And then I think the non-traditional sources is definitely something that can be tapped more easily. So Greg, let's hear again. You talked about some of the challenges, and you've got the scale certainly with your big district. So what are some of the ways that you've used?
A couple of things that the other gentleman mentioned, like the whole idea of wanting to know the benefits. I love to share the benefits. I love to share what's going on. We use social media all the time in the schools to tell the school story, because of course, if you don't tell the story, someone else will, and it may not be exactly what you want told. And I always go with well, I know this is crazy, but I always think of Willie Sutton. You may or may not know him. He was the bank robber that the FBI caught, and they said, Willie, why are you robbing banks? And he says, well, because that's where the money is. And when I get on social media, yes, we go to social media because that's where the kids are, be it Instagram, be it Facebook. Yeah, well, that's where the parents are. So we would do live streams on Facebook. So yeah, the parents could see it, but other people could click in and see what's going on in our schools, just like Dan was talking about, showing folks what we're doing. We made sure that we wanted folks to see what we're doing in our school. I would talk to my teachers about our job is we're going to train these kids, we're going to teach these kids, we're going to do amazing things with these kids. And I would always challenge these pre-service folks that wanted a job. I'd say, this is going to be a difficult school. This is an inner city school, but we're going to do amazing work here. And we did amazing work. And I would always challenge them. I don't know. Do you believe you're good enough to work at this school? I would turn it back on them to make them think, it's going to be a good, okay. And I would try to figure out ways to make my school desirable to them and making sure it's exciting and impactful, not only to the students. I'm using my hands, sorry. Not only to my students, but also to my teachers. Because I would actually have my teachers act as recruiters when they're out, when they go to a conference and they see someone training or they see someone that may fit. They may want to talk to them about coming to my school. I know that's kind of crazy, but I didn't mind. I wanted the best of the best for my students, and I wanted them to have those opportunities, not only to go to conferences, but also to bring back whatever they could, even if it's another teacher. And that happened a couple of times where, hey, Mr. Bagby, I met so-and-so at a conference and I think that'd be great. Actually, it make your school so desirable. Steve Barton, I can't remember his quote, be so amazing that they can't forget you or can't ignore you. And that's what I wanted to do with my school. And there were teachers, like there's one teacher, she wanted to transfer in. She was only going to be in the classroom one more year before she went into administration, but she wanted to work at my school. And she was an amazing teacher. She was actually featured on Ellen DeGeneres or Ellen or something like that because of all the work that she did. But she wanted to teach at my school before she went into administration, only because I had all these other folks making it seem, well, it was desirable, making it so desirable because I made it that way, and because I worked with the teachers so that we could all make it that way. But we made it so desirable and we put it out there so folks could see. So we cast a wide net on Facebook. And yes, I had someone from New Jersey and someone from West Virginia, both find my school because of presentations at conferences and other things. And they applied for my school just out of nowhere. They're going to move families in. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't have all the power from the district because it's just a school in the district, and it's very telling when your teachers, when they get these jobs and they become coaches for the district and they move up and they do all these things. And then when they're tired of being a coach or tired of doing this job or that job and they want to come back to your school, it's very telling when you have folks coming back that you tried to send off and say, hey, fly, you're on your own. But that was one of the things I always told my teachers. I don't want them to end up there if that's not where they want to be, in the sense of I want you to grow to be that AP, that principal, that coach, that trainer. I always push my teachers to grow. The whole idea of lifelong learning was the thing at my school, and not just for the students, but also for the teachers. So there we go. I did a lot of social media, a lot of pre-service. I would host student teachers every semester. I would go to colleges that weren't even sending student teachers to my school and say, hey, we got some great teachers here. You should try us out. And it's just one of those things where I tried to make sure my story was being told and everyone knew, like we talked about that vision and mission, everyone knew what we're doing and what we wanted to as our ultimate goal. And we were all pushing towards that. So there you go.
No, and I love that you're using teachers as the recruitment process. It's one thing for someone from the central office to say, hey, this is awesome. But it's another thing to hear from a classroom teacher that this really is awesome. And so thank you for sharing that. And I see some questions come in. Just a reminder, keep them coming. We will have some time after this conversation to dig into some of your questions. So keep them coming in. I wanted to touch on the onboarding process. So that being a very key piece to retention. So maybe Fred, let's start with you if you want to talk a little bit about the onboarding process, things you found that have worked well.
Remember at the beginning, I talked about the past, the present, and the future. One of the things I have seen and what I'm seeing now, and I think it's going to continue this, districts want to prepare to bring in their new employees, and the preparation always starting with something that's very positive about their arrival and welcome them in to showcase their culture and climate and their nomenclature of their language, what they want to project, and also to let them know they value them coming in. And new employees really appreciate that, and they want to know that. You know, and some of the things I used to hear from pre-service teachers is they go, I know the superintendent is just so far away, I'll never get to hear he or she. I think when you bring in your superintendent, allow them to have a conversation with them. I've heard people do coffee chats. They've done small groups with even with different groups. That's very important that they get to know who the superintendent and other people. So it's not that, oh, it's those people up there. I used to love hearing that one. But new employees want to know what are the training and resources that's going to be necessary for them to be successful. They want to know, what am I going to use? What are the things I need to know to do my job and feel good about it? And so to make sure they can do that, they want to make sure that their personalized journey in this space of education, they have enough support, the training, the resources to do the job. The next piece that's always just very important is integrating the culture. And you've heard our panelists talk about that in their districts. And it's what I've heard from all the districts. Whether it was during our time when we were going through the pandemic or current and also the future, make sure you integrate and introduce to them, what is the school's culture? What is the culture of the district and what they're trying to project in the mission and vision, and let the users in the district articulate that. You heard him say, the teacher, let them do it. I was fortunate as a teacher when I was in the urban setting, they would send me out to talk to other folks who were future teachers. Real big, real important. The goals and expectations. I think it's for coming in, new employees want to know, and I said this earlier about what are the expectations? What are the expectations of the job that is clear and set? When it's not clear, they move on. They will switch in a heartbeat and we're seeing that. We'll go from one place to the next. Places that are retaining folks better was very clear up front about what their resources, their expectations are. And then I did say this about inspecting. That means monitoring and adjusting as necessary and giving them the tools and reflecting on their practice in the job, whether they're a teacher or any other kind of employee, and helping them to see a pathway of growth. And, you know, it's nothing better than giving them milestones and then to celebrate the small milestones. If you're going to do any kind of observations of teachers, tell them, you know, what was great about what they were doing and also professional growth opportunities, but tell them to celebrate them. The more they are celebrated, that works way more than a dollar bill and giving them that feedback. And also, they want to know about the data that's driving what schools and how they're producing. And that data is coming from what students are doing, and they want to know everything that's around about the district. I will say this, here in PowerSchool, we're seeing those elements that districts come to us to look for the tools to support them in doing that. And then we try to help them with the best practices that we see from across the country when I was in a strategic advisor position to do that. But that data driven is important for all of those components. So let me just go back as a feedback. Prepare them, give them the training opportunities, integrate the culture, the expectations, inspecting and monitoring them, celebrating them in their milestones, giving them quality feedback on a regular basis, and letting them know this is how the data has been driven, not just from your classroom, but our school and our district, so they can see the big picture.
I love that. I think we need more celebration. And I just love that. Again, it's going back to that culture. This is a culture where you are welcome, where you are heard, where you are supported. And I agree that really clarifying what your job is, and then here's how we're going to support that to make sure you're successful. And we're going to celebrate you when you do that. That's fantastic.
It is. And if I said one last thing, and I won't pull too much more of your time. In my experience in working with some first-year teachers, a couple of them, one that I was focusing on, she said, I liked the urban setting that I was going in. It wasn't the kids at all. I didn't have clear expectations. So that's why I moved on.
Yeah, that's great. Great advice. Thank you. Greg, you want to tell us a little bit about some of the onboarding tips you use?
Sure. Well, a couple of things that I do. Well, first and foremost, when I have pre-service teachers in my room or in my building, I always treated them like regular teachers. I know that sounds crazy, but I would do
Not
observations on them
crazy.
just like I would do with the other teachers, just because I wanted them to feel like they're a part of the team. They were always invited to all faculty meetings and even given duty rosters. Good for them. But I always tried to make sure that they felt like a part of the team from the get-go or for the start. And a couple of other things I have to just mention. Fred, thank you for using the word nomenclature. I was a music teacher a long time ago, and I used nomenclature all the time, and the kids thought it was such a crazy word. I was like, come on, guys. Okay, that's scale. That looks anyway. So thank you for that. But would I get new teachers every year before they even sat inside their classroom, I would always take them to lunch together as a faculty or new faculty. Some years it was 4 or 5 teachers. Some years it was just myself, the assistant principal, the fine arts coordinator, and one person. But we would always go to lunch, and I would have them talk about themselves and share about themselves, and I'll share my expectations and how I felt about education. I'd share my educational philosophy. I'd talk about Ron Edmonds. We can, whenever and wherever we choose, successfully educate all students whose learning is of interest to us, and tell why I believe that quote means so much to me, and just have them relax and have a conversation over food. And food, it greases a lot of wheels when you're working with new folks, and it's amazing. And that would introduce them to the leaders in the building and get them a little bit more comfortable. And when I have my new teachers come in, part of their onboarding process, we're having my other teachers do some of the training, not just, oh, this is going to be your mentor, or that's going to be your mentor. Have specific teachers that I know, oh, Miss Earhart, she's a really sharp cookie when dealing with these things that you have to turn into the office. So I'm going to have Miss Earhart work with the new teachers. I wanted my teachers to always be trained by other teachers. Faculty meetings, I would get up and say the things that I had to say when the district told me. But for the most part, I wanted the teachers to be the ones leading and promoting the learning. And I never had a meeting unless I had to have a meeting because they told me to. But, and one other thing that I would do, we had these things called golden tickets. We were SWPBIS. I think that's School-Wide
Oh
Positive
yeah.
Behavior Support School. But I wanted to do it not just for the students, I wanted to do it for the teachers. So the teachers could give each other golden tickets. And with so many golden tickets, they could do different things and yes, my wife, she didn't like it, but the teachers would turn in golden tickets, and I would pay for them to go get their car washed or pay for food from a local eatery, some DoorDash for the teachers. Or I would even give them, don't tell my district, time off, and I would cover their classrooms. And we would do different things. The admin and I, we would do things like this to show the teachers, not only do we care about you, we want to care for you, and we want to even celebrate you, as Fred was talking about, in ways by giving you these, because when we see you doing something great and over and above, we'll give you a golden ticket. Okay, not only us, we'll give golden tickets to other teachers so they can give them out to other teachers as well. So if Miss Smith sees Miss James doing something amazing, she could give her a golden ticket, and it will have from Miss James or from Miss Smith because of blah, blah, blah. And the teachers turn them in, and we would just spend a bunch of money on teachers just because it just made it better that teachers could give to each other and share and celebrate with each other. And it just seems like a great way to help keep teachers not only working together, just motivated and happy to be around each other. So I know time's short. So
I know. I love the golden tickets though, and I love they can give them to each other. And then what a great way to start building that community. And again, going back to that really positive, rewarding culture. That's awesome. So Dan, I want to have you jump in here with some onboarding tips.
Yeah, and I want to make sure we have time for our Q&As. So but what's beautiful is my friends speak my voice. You've heard there's not much more I can say that hasn't been said. What I would say that makes us not necessarily unique, but a couple of the key things to bring people on board with us. That conversation with our executive director, he just started something kind of new that I was kind of impressed with. Is he sits down with them and goes through our kind of core principles. We have our mission and vision, but we also have these guiding principles. And he asks them, like, which of these resonate with you? And then when he brings everybody on, he sends out a little email saying, "Hey, welcome to the staff," and then points out like the 4 or the 3 core principles that spoke to them were integrity, authenticity, and challenge, or the whichever ones like really spoke to them, which I thought it's kind of like a, hey, you actually listened to me and heard me and didn't just fill in a blank, right? So I really appreciated that. And then one of the other things that we do is, as my colleague Rusha is right here next to me right now, because she's chiefly responsible for it, is she brings, we make sure our new hires get the technology they need as quickly as possible. We don't, you don't end up in this cycle of wait and wait and wait. Well, first we need to make sure, and we have to do this. My feeling is, if you have been hired and you are trusted enough to be hired, then you're trusted enough to have any of the things that you could possibly need to be successful to do your job. And there should not be another layer. And well, first we need to make sure. Nope. Just
very good,
give them stuff, bro. Like, why are we holding on to, like, I felt terrible today because I've been given the key fob to one of the buildings to give to one of our new hires, and I've forgotten to give it to her, and she was outside for like a half an hour waiting to get in, and I'm like, what's happening? She's like, oh, I had my coffee, I got on a call, it was fine. I'm like, but I have it for you, I'm so sorry. Anyway, but I really think the more we can do to mitigate those barriers, there's no joy like the joy of bringing a 2-drawer filing cabinet to someone who thinks they will never get one. Like, they're just, that was yesterday was my shining moment, was wheeling up a filing cabinet from the basement. Like,
oh my gosh.
But you would have thought I put $1 million in her pocket.
Oh.
So I do have to have a conversation with her about perspective and self-worth. But it was really cool to see that just those little lifts can make a big difference, and the more in that onboarding process, that builds trust, that builds relationships, and that makes them want to stay, right? And I know that that's coming up. There's going to be a session about holding on to all these great people that we're able to bring.
Exactly. In part 2, we're talking about retention, and we have a lot of questions come in, but I think actually our panels touched on a lot of them, such as social media strategies, platforms to use, etc. So just keeping an eye on the clock here. I'm just going to go with what is your number one tip for those who are struggling to expand their candidate pool? And then we'll kind of go around the horn with kind of like the most important. I feel like I know what you're going to say, but maybe Fred, I'll start with you.
I think your number one tool should be a clear, effective tool that's easy to use for the candidate and for the district. If the technology is going to hang them up, it's going to slow down the process. So the number one thing is having an effective tool to do the things that you want have done, and that it can incorporate all those other components we talked about in the non-traditional methods, onboarding. All of those components are going to be important.
Okay. And PowerSchool is probably a good place to check out.
PowerSchool is a great place to start.
I'll give you a plug. Greg, how about you? One piece of advice.
In casting a wide net, I say go ahead and make sure that your teachers are on board with what you're doing, because if you're not doing something great, then they're probably not. However, if you're doing great things, cast that net through your teachers. Let your teachers post things about your school. And if you need a new teacher, or if you need this or need that, I have friends and folks that I've trained, I guess, and I see it all the time where, hey, this school needs this teacher and that teacher. And it's not only on X Twitter, but it's also on Instagram and LinkedIn, and some say TikTok. I don't use it, but I say, okay, yay. But yeah, don't be afraid to cast that net on the socials. Like Willie said, why do you go to the socials? That's where the people are.
Oh, absolutely. All right, Dan, you want to bring us home here?
I'll bring us home. I will go back to what I started with, which is mission and vision. It may be the hardest thing for your district, your school to do, but man, if I was going to put all my energy into one thing that I think will make the school better and more attractive to more candidates and make people want to talk about what's happening there, is to make sure that the mission and vision you have is authentic and real to what you actually want to do as a school community, and do everything you can to ensure that the people who are part of that school community also, are aligned to that. And that will reap so many more rewards than you can even imagine.
I love it. This has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much to our panel. Really appreciate your time and your ideas. We've covered so much. Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you to PowerSchool for making our conversation possible. And now we are going to announce the winner of our $250 Amazon gift card. I do want to remind everybody that we are hosting a part 2 of this series on September 6th, and that we're going to be touching on the retention piece for that. So we've got another great panel for that as well. Fred's, I think Fred's coming back. Dan's going to be back. We've got some other folks. So the winner is Marilyn Hamilton from the District of Columbia. So congratulations to Marilyn. And thank you again to our panel, to PowerSchool, and to all of you for joining us today. Really appreciate your time, and wish you good luck for back to school. Have a great day.